everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist Podcast. I'm excited today. We have somebody that's not a therapist, but she's in a very cool niche, and I think all of us can relate to what she does for a living. Laura Haley, she's a travel content writer, but she helps people write like authentic content about themselves. And before we hit record, I was saying, like, well, not all the traveling therapists listening are like travel influencers or whatever. Some of them do travel and might want to get some travel influence stuff going on. Like, you never know, as another income stream. But really that concept of background, like, in grad school, we learn basically we're not supposed to self-disclose anything about ourselves to our clients. We're supposed to be like a blank slate, which none of us really are. A lot of us, once we're in, we self-disclose like in a like calculated way, almost, to be like build rapport or to share a little bit about ourselves, to let them in a little bit, to help them feel like they could trust us, all that stuff. But really, it's a struggle. And then when you talk about social media, like there's this whole boom now around get on social media, talk about what you do in therapy, and that's going to attract your ideal therapy client to come and work with you. And this is how a lot of therapists market these days. So Laura and I were like trying to figure out like how does this fit into the Traveling Therapist Podcast, if they're not travel influencers or whatever. But I want to talk about that. Like, how do we like where's the line with social media content and sharing about our personal lives and also doing it in a strategic, authentic way that's going to help us, if you're trying to bring new clients in, or if you're like me and you're multi-passionate, you have a million income streams, how do I hone down and have like a cohesive brand voice, like all of that? So that's a lot to say, Laura, to talk about in 30 minutes, but let's dive in. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and let's just like have this conversation.
Yes, I have so many thoughts for you. So thanks so much for having me here. I'm Laura. I am a content strategist for travel influencers. Basically, that means I'm the person behind the scenes on the other side of travel influencer marketing, making their businesses work so that they can enjoy the beautiful places they're in. But what comes up a lot is how much do I share about myself versus like talk about my actual services. And I think
Mhm.
where this can relate to therapists or like be a very interesting corner of this conversation is that a lot of people who are starting, they know they need to show up on social media to talk about their business. And a lot of the times people think they need to have two accounts, or they might get
Yeah.
recommended to start two accounts, one for your personal life and one for your business life. And as a therapist, I could see how that could be very important. Like, I'm going to share my photos for my family and my friends, but also I might need an account to promote what I do.
Mm.
And I think the my recommendation is always to just have one,
Okay.
because it's less work. It's way less work to try and manage two, and also you can share both. You can share
Yeah.
both about yourself and your services without it feeling like so personal. Like, I think people think, "Oh my gosh, I have to share about my personal life."
Mhm.
But you get to decide how personal you want to be, and you can create that extra account if you really want to stay in touch with, the family and friends you don't see all the time and show them what you're doing. But I think the beauty comes in blending it, because most people are like, "Okay, great. I know that I need to find a therapist here. But how am I like, am I what am I gonna do? Am I gonna Google online? Like, I wanna see who this person is because I need to know if they can relate to me, if
Mhm.
they can actually help. Do we have any commonalities? Do they really
Yes.
understand what I'm, like, going through? And the best way to
Yes.
do that is to stalk their Instagram or their social media, because these days people are using those platforms as search engines. It's not just as, like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to their website first to see what Kim does." No, I'm gonna look her up on Instagram to get a really clear idea of what she does, and then I'll decide if this is my person or not. So trying to find a way to blend them will be far more successful, and I think more fun, because then people get to know you as, like, the therapist who does XYZ.
Because it's like if I specialize in OCD or something, I want to see your Instagram is talking about what you know about OCD and then maybe some like personal reels about your own OCD. Because most therapists, honestly, they have a niche. It's because they have the same problem. I mean,
Yes.
really. You can
Yes.
just tell a therapist's problems by looking at their niches. It's like, okay, you codependency, chemical dependency, all of that PTSD. Like it's like, okay, obviously you have some experience in this somehow. So I,
Totally.
I love that. I love hearing you say that.
That's such a good point, because most of the time when we're creating content, we're constantly thinking about, like, "Oh my gosh, well, will the person on the other end of this find this relatable or want to take action from this? But I think what can make that so much easier to try and answer that question is thinking about what you would take action from, because like you said, a lot of therapists specialize in one area because they might have personal experience in that area,
Mhm.
and a lot of the times we are our own target audience. So the type of
Yes.
content you like to create is the type of content you like to see. So,
Oh, I
like,
love that.
you can just go look at your feed of, "Oh my gosh, this is really resonating with me. What is the format of this post? How can I just tweak that to be for my own niche and for my audience?" Because then it also makes content more fun. You're not just like
Yes, it's, like, not disconnected from if you're making content that you're not really connected to because you think that's who the audience you wanna attract, it's not gonna come across as authentic, I think,
right.
right?
And
Yeah.
people can tell. People can tell when you're creating something that you just feel like you have to create rather than sharing because you are genuinely feeling inspired about a topic or a piece of content and want to share it. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just like we can tell when AI writes things versus a real human,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. We can tell when somebody is like, buy my services and I'm just posting this because the world told me I have to, versus I am so passionate about helping people with XYZ. I'm gonna share
Yes,
about it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, for the multi-passionate therapists listening to this that have other income streams, and they know me too, like the traveling therapist, insurance billing, and AI are my passions. But it all of that was born out of like problems I had in my life, and I had to figure out a solution for them. So then I created content around that, like how to help, therapists learn how to bill insurance because I had a nightmare story. And, I use AI for everything. I'm obsessed with it. So I'm like, now I've got to teach all the therapists how to use AI. And I'm a digital nomad traveling therapist, so it's like I gotta teach other people how to live this lifestyle,
Yeah.
because I'm doing the same thing, so, yeah, I
Yeah.
totally get that, and then creating the content around it is a lot easier because it's like, "This actually happened to me today." Like, "I got a
Mhm.
claim denied, and what do I do about this?" That kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah. Totally. I
yeah.
think sharing that behind the scenes content, and by behind the scenes, I mean, okay, that did just happen to you. Like an insurance claim situation happened and you know that you have insider information on how to remedy this or like how to prevent this from happening again. Sharing that behind the scenes content of like, "Oh my gosh, this happened to me today. This is really frustrating. This is what I'm dealing with." People love to see. People are so nosy. We cannot forget.
Yes.
They are so nosy, and we can use that to our advantage without showing them like our nighttime routine or like your shower. Like, no, like we don't need that. And you get to
Yeah.
decide how nosy you want to share, but people love to see what you are doing and what you are creating. And I've noticed that as creators are building, or even, you can apply this to therapists, of course, are
Mhm.
building these services or are building a new offer, if they share about what they're building before they actually launch it, it gets so many people excited. I just bought a digital product from somebody who I have been watching her build this digital product for weeks, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it." So
Yeah.
using your behind the scenes daily tasks as content
Mhm.
will get people more excited about your actual offer. And then it shows them like, "Oh my gosh, this person really cares about what they're doing. And look
Yeah.
at this cool stuff that they're trying to learn to help me." Is just like endless content. So everything you're doing in your daily life can be a piece of content. You just can decide how much you want to share about it or not.
And how do we find the time to do that? Because every time I do a podcast, I'm like, this program I use, right, Riverside, it's like they give you these screenshots at the end. I'm like, I really should be taking these screenshots, putting them over on Instagram and saying, "Oh my god, I just did the coolest interview with Laura Haley, and she's telling me about." But it's like, I don't have like I do have a system for social media, but that part's not incorporated into it. I know you help with that too, like creators, like how to like get
Make it
these
easy.
systems going, like, do you have tips for that? I mean, I know that's, like, kinda what you do and how you help people, but
Yes. Do I have tips for that? I do. Okay. It is the yeah. We can have a million ideas of content things. Okay? You like so many, and you might write them down in different places. Like you it might the best ideas we have never ever ever come to us when we're sitting in front of our computers ready to work. They come to us when we're in the grocery store, at like far away from any sort of technology we could beautifully capture this in, and it's likely that your ideas are, like, scattered in a bunch of different places. Maybe they're in some Google Doc and some physical notebook or in
Yes.
a text message, whatever. Having just one single place that always moves with you to dump those content ideas in is going to be life-changing. It would be awesome if everyone carried around a notebook, but that's, like, not realistic.
Yeah.
So, I use, like, my Apple Notes. I have one that's
Yeah.
called the dumping ground, and I just when I'm out and about and I have ideas, they get dumped in there.
Love
And then
that.
later, I set the time to this is the hardest part, look
Mhm.
at them and decide,
Yeah.
"Okay, what do I mean by this cryptic note I left myself?" Or, like, "What is this, really viable anymore?" That is super helpful. I use if you wanna get, like, fancier with content organization, I use Asana, which is just a project managing tool, really. It is
Mhm.
really awesome because you can keep track of your ideas in there I have a section, a column, and you can do this in a Google Sheet, you can do this in that Apple Note or in a notebook, whatever, something that you'll use. So, like, don't go create a beautiful system just because someone tells you to and it sounds nice.
Mhm.
But I have a column in there that is for ideas. So it's like, great, I got this idea. I'm not sure yet if it's really gonna work. I'll put it in
Yeah.
there. I have another column that is to create. So that means this idea is valid. I already have ideas for a caption for it or a photo or something. Great. I'm gonna put it in there. And like that's gonna be my low-hanging fruit of content. And then I have a column that is to schedule or post, meaning that piece is ready. I've sat down, I've batched the
Nice.
content, it's ready to go. I just need to like hit publish, whatever. Those three columns help me stay organized on the millions of content ideas that come in rather than having like one massive running list of content. And then you can go back and look at what you've shared and have seen what does perform well. But I would try and
Nice.
keep it simple. It doesn't have to be something beautiful and amazing, but it just has to work for you that you're not going to give up on
Yeah.
eventually.
Oh my god. I've tried about 1,000 different systems. I
I
think
know.
we've got it now and ClickUp and there's, like, a whole thing with my VA and, like, there's a whole thing. I think we've got it figured out, but it took a lot of work to try to figure out what's gonna work for everybody, that we're communicating clearly, and it's a
It's
mess.
hard, I know, because it's you, like, hear about a new system or a new
Yeah.
tool, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Amazing. This is
Yeah.
gonna be the one. I'm gonna be this person." And then
Yeah.
you use it for a day, and you're like, "No.
Yeah.
No, that was a good idea for an hour, and now it's just not realistic." So I love to recommend these fun, like, set it up systems, but you just have to be super realistic with what you're actually going to do
I love that.
and do it that way,
Yeah.
because otherwise it's not gonna work out.
That's so smart. Mhm.
My
Yeah.
My other biggest tip for making content creation easier is to batch create it. So you'll choose a day on your calendar, and maybe an hour, 2 hours, whatever you can find, and that is when you're gonna sit down and create content for whatever you have, like the week, the month, whatever. Because it is so much faster to block off 2 to 3 hours of time on your calendar to create the posts rather than do it in real time. Like, if you have a note
Mhm.
on your calendar that's like, "Great, it's Wednesday, I'm gonna post today," you would be surprised how long it takes to put together that post on the fly, whereas if you just
Yes.
sat down for 2 hours to get it all done, and then it goes on its own. There's, like, no better feeling than opening your accounts and you're like, "Wow, I forgot that I even
I
wrote
forgot I
that,"
even made
and there
that.
it is. That is, like, a cheat code like, dopamine to feel like you're ahead.
I love
Um,
that. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tiny thing, but it is, like that's the hardest part is making the time to actually do it, and I
Yeah.
think people will when they feel the pain of doing the creating on the fly.
Mhm. Like me, like, every single night. We're supposed to be watching a TV show, and my boyfriend's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm looking for a B-roll because I have nothing to put out tomorrow, and I'm gonna just do this real quick."
No.
Luckily, I have the sense of mind sometimes to record B-rolls when I'm in pretty places, but, those are, like,
I
my
know.
saviors. When I say B-rolls, anybody listening that doesn't even know what I'm talking about, like, just, like, filming yourself working on the computer or, like, walking around in a pretty place or just ask my boyfriend to hold the camera while I walk somewhere, that kind of thing, just to have, like, some background to show. Yeah.
Totally. And you can use those clips over and over and over again, which is the best part. And, like, that's the kind of stuff that performs well.
Yeah.
As well as,
That's
like,
true.
if you pair that B-roll with a reel or two going out every, 2 weeks or something of you talking to the camera, that will get people to connect so well. Like, having a good mix of
Love that.
giving someone the opportunity to read the text on screen and then the opportunity to see your face talking to them. Because
That's
when we
awesome.
want to buy from someone, we're like, "We need to know
Like, what's your
they
vibe? Do
are,
I
like,
even
if
like you?
do you have, like, an insane voice that I couldn't listen to?" Like, we'd sit in our therapy session, and I'd be like, "I literally can't hear anything you're saying because you just are not you're not my person." Like, creating that content that tells people who you are or what
Exactly.
you're like will go so much farther. And then
Yeah.
probably, lead to longer term relationships with your clients.
Yes.
Reduce
Exactly.
the bouncing around trying to find the right person for them.
Yeah. And it's that, no, like, trust factor that comes with that, like, those talking head reels, I guess you'd call them, or the places
Mhm.
where you're showing up and just kinda giving a quick lesson or some tips or something like that where people are like, "Oh, okay, I can see how you talk, I like your energy, you seem to know what you're talking about," like, all of that stuff to convert, like, people into wanting to buy from you or work with you as a therapist or whatever you're trying to do with social media. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of resistance from people who have never shown or never, like, spoken to the camera before to start doing that.
Mhm.
That's terrifying for
Yeah.
sure. I get
Yeah.
it, and I have people say to me, like, "I don't know how you just do that." And, my advice when this comes up is a couple of things. The first is that you have to think about the quantity of content people are consuming every single day.
Mhm.
Unfortunately and fortunately, they're not gonna remember your face or what you
Yeah.
said that first time, which is great because
Yeah.
then if you're nervous about sharing yourself, it's like, "Whatever, I'm gonna post out here," and if someone sees it and remembers, awesome, but also 90% of people are just gonna keep scrolling and never remember your
Yeah.
face. That's far less embarrassing. The other thing is, like, you have this is stolen from social media strategists I work with. This is not my advice, but I think it's so powerful.
Mm,
You have so much expertise and knowledge that it is almost selfish to keep it to yourself and not
I
share it with
love
somebody
that.
else. So if you are able to get over yourself for 30 seconds and give advice that could literally change somebody's life, then and if you keep that to yourself, that is selfish. But if you share that with somebody, that is like the most powerful thing you could do. So
Totally.
kind of kicking yourself in the pants a little bit to, like, share the thing that you know
Yeah.
to somebody else is so powerful and can help you kind of get over the camera chatting to the camera thing,
I love that.
and just
Yeah.
pretend you're talking to a friend
Oh,
is
good.
most helpful, for
And
sure.
that's my strategy for public speaking in general. People
Yeah.
ask I talk about that all the time on this podcast. I hate public speaking. I get so anxious. I hate it so much, but I try to remember that exact advice. I don't remember who I heard it from, but yeah, it's so helpful to be like, all right, just get over yourself. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And this is actually interesting and helpful information that
Yeah.
you have to share.
If you think about how many people post things on the internet every day
Mhm.
and, like, embarrassing things, like, I know we've all
Yes.
seen people doing embarrassing things, and they still hit publish on the internet, and you talking is not a big deal. It
Yeah,
is
and
not
people
a big
actually
deal.
like the embarrassing, like, authentic, like, real stuff, like,
They do.
you know, from my experience?
They do. They do. I
Yeah.
tell my travel creator clients, like, show us how like, people love to watch you suffer. I'm sorry. They
Yeah.
do. Like, if you are stuck in this horrible situation or, like, have a 30-hour layover or something, like, people love that. And I
Yeah.
don't know whether we should be concerned about that or not yet, but it does perform well.
Well, I think people can commiserate, like, you could feel the pain? It's like, oh my god, I remember that time I was stuck in that airport, that was so awful, I feel so bad for her, but it's like, what is she gonna do? How's she gonna handle it? Like, that kinda
Yeah.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah. And you
that's
can
good
learn a
advice.
lot about how people when they share situations like that, how you just learn a lot about people when they share from a place of, "Oh my gosh, I'm dealing with something that is horrible." And that can also help you learn, "Is this the right person for me? Did they
Yeah,
handle this situation that to them was like Mount Everest, but to us is like not a big deal in a way
yeah,
that, doesn't feel icky or like put you off?" Then that can help you learn
yeah.
a lot about whether they're your person or not.
I like that too, and it's also, like, if they don't like you, good, because, like, as a therapist, all of us therapists have had this. Somebody shows up for an intake appointment with you, and it's like you're in the session, and you're like, "Oh my god, I do not click with this person at all. All this is not gonna be fun." Like, I mean, we've all had those clients, where it's like, "All right, well, I'm a professional, I know how to help people, I'm just gonna do it anyway," but there's always that, like, it doesn't really click, so if people see you and they don't click, like, that's a blessing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You don't have to, like, endure that awful unconnection or whatever you wanna disconnection or whatever it is,
Yeah.
where you're not really gelling as a good fit. Um,
Totally. And I
yeah.
think, like, that's exactly right, because if you hopefully, like, you can create content that would only allow the people to get that far to an intake if they are certain or, like,
Yeah.
very confident that you're their person.
Yeah.
But I think people don't are nervous to be a little bit I don't have a better word than polarizing, but that's kind of it. Like, your
Mm.
brand should if it is repelling people away and bringing people in, it is doing the right thing. Like, if it is turning people away, you are on the right track because you're getting closer to finding the people who
Love that.
really want to work with you. And I think people are a little bit afraid to share like, if you have a hot take, a hot opinion on something, an unpopular opinion, I think you should share it
Yeah.
because then you'll get a step closer to finding the right people. It's that's an easy hack to sort of boost engagement. Share a hot
Yeah.
opinion because people are very quick to respond and tell you what they think, which is helpful
Mhm.
and unhelpful. But
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes don't read the comments if they're really mean. Right.
right, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
I
Or
know.
use that for I love the Instagram reels or whatever when somebody's, like, pulling up somebody's comment, and they share it on the screen, and they're like, "Yeah, can you believe this asshole said this to me? This
I know.
this is the truth. This is what I think about what you said." I love
Okay.
those. It's so much
So funny
drama.
you say this. I was in a
Yeah.
coffee shop yesterday and they have a framed photo of a Yelp review, 2 stars, and it says, disgustingly pro women, this coffee shop, blah, 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 blah. Right next to that framed photo is merch that says disgustingly pro women on like t-shirts, sweatshirts. It was
So smart.
amazing. Like rather than stooping to their level, they're like, great, you just made us. And then there's a note that like they donate the proceeds of their pro women things to this foundations. Like this guy has no idea what he's done. But instead of
I
stooping to
love
their level, they're like, great, thanks.
that is so awesome. I just love when people do stuff like that.
I know.
I love it. Like somebody left this comment because I'm all in on AI. Somebody left this comment that was like, you're destroying our profession or something, said something like that. And I remember I shared that in a reel. I can't remember what all he said, but I shared it and I was like, it was when that trend was out, like very demure, very whatever that
Yeah.
was. I
Yeah.
did that and I was like, see how I didn't respond to this guy in a rude way? And that reel got so much engagement just because it was like, it was snarky. It was like, look what this guy said. And can you
Yep.
believe this? And of
Yep.
course, some people in the comments were like, yeah, I agree with them. And other people were like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. But it got a lot of, engagement and
Totally.
my right ideal people like were with me. They were like, good for you for saying that to him or standing up to him or whatever.
Totally. Totally.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a therapist who is sharing online and you have a smaller community, that is a little bit of a blessing in disguise because you
Hmm.
won't get you won't get as much hate. I would say 90% of
Yeah.
people on the internet are great and kind. And it is only when you share when something like really blows up that people will share their opinions because they forget that there's a human who posted this and you just have to ignore them and
Hmm.
literally not think about it because they have nothing better to do and they probably need your services, to be honest, if they're doing that. So I wouldn't let that I mean, I've had people tell me like, I don't want to post on Instagram because it's just people are so mean. I'm like, people are mean. They're mean a lot of places online though.
Yeah.
And your tiny community starting is not they're not gonna be mean, promise.
Yeah.
And you
And you
just take
probably
it
have
every
raving fans that are going to defend you because that's happened to me before. Somebody's been like, yeah, okay, you're a jerk,
Yeah.
and here's why.
Yeah.
So a lot of
Absolutely.
times you see that too, which helps. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know. I
Oh, I
know.
love all this help you're giving. It's amazing.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
So I kind of heard you allude to this, but you're saying, like, mixing up the content styles, like, always not doing a B-roll or a talking head. It sounded like you were kind of, like, advocating for a mixture of different
Sure.
methods, maybe
Yeah,
to see what works and what doesn't work and that kinda thing too?
sure. I think that you can have there's, like, so much advice online on different strategies, and you should post XYZ a day, and you should
Yeah.
share this hashtag, and you should do this thing, and it can be so incredibly hard to know who to listen to because 'cause you'll see one reel and
Yes.
it says, "Post 5 times a day." That is ridiculous. And then you see another that's like, "Don't do that." And you're like, "Well, what do I do?" I think
Exactly.
what people need to realize is that social media is not your only marketing channel. It is one part of the whole bit. And so you don't
Yes.
need to be pouring so much time into creating just for one marketing aspect. I like to think of our social media as a billboard.
Mhm.
So we are creating content that is evergreen, meaning no matter when somebody comes to your page, they can see that post and they're like, great, that still makes sense to me, even though it was posted 3 months ago. It's still relevant. It's not a trend. And they can take the content that you've shared, consume it, and then move further down your funnel. So maybe you have a call to action for them to join your newsletter or schedule a call with you. It's like, great, here's this billboard of content that is
Yeah.
there that then I can move through and connect with this person or learn more. So I think there's a bunch of strategies, but using social media in a way that makes sense to you or like aligns with your goals and is not overwhelming will be far more helpful in helping you stay consistent, but also making sure your content is forever relevant to people who show up.
Mm.
If I was just starting somebody on social media, they start a new account, or they're like, I know I need to do this social media thing and I don't want to do it, but I'm going to,
Yeah.
I would start with sharing a few stories. Stories go really far. A
Mhm.
lot of people see them who don't follow you. It's very interesting. They're also the easiest to see. They're also a great low effort way to share your face if you are nervous about that because they go away in 24 hours. So it's not
Yes.
permanent. Well,
Yeah.
it's not permanent to the outside.
Mhm.
And that is what I would do. I'd focus on sharing a few behind the scenes stories. Maybe you like always go get a coffee on Friday. I would love to know what kind of coffee you drink. Would love to know. Or like
Yeah.
what resources do you love to learn from? Things like that. I would then focus on sharing a couple of carousels about who you are and what you do and why you do it, and leaving those pin them to the top of your profile so that when
Mhm.
somebody comes, they're like, "Great, who are you? What do you do? How can you help me?" Those are always there for somebody to learn from.
Mhm.
Then you can kind of when you're doom scrolling online and you see ideas and you're like, "Wow, this therapist shared this idea. I love it. I could totally see how I could replicate that for myself." That's when you can grab that link or write down the note to yourself in your notes app or whatever you're sharing on to come back to later to then share again. But I would just start with something low lift like stories. Doesn't have to be beautifully produced. You don't have to like write a caption. It's just a photo or
Yeah.
video and making those 3 carousel posts and pinning them to your profile so that people can understand who you are and what you do. And then
Mhm.
from there, I would just, if you're ready to like create reels or create content, I would do some B-roll, do some talking head, talking about the same things that are in your first pinned posts, and do that twice a week, once a
Yeah.
week.
Nice.
And the most important part I would say is like engaging with other therapists. Go follow them, go comment on their content, see who follows them, see if any of the people who follow them might be your target client.
Mm.
Go, if they have a public profile, go like their things, go comment on their things, kind of fall into that engagement loop of I'm
Yeah.
gonna go comment with them, engage with them, because then they'll see, oh, this therapist liked my thing. Oh my gosh, I was looking for somebody who seems to align with this. Let me go check out their page, learn more about you, then fall into your lead funnel. So
Love
it's
that.
very simple, but it's
Mhm.
not easy to do.
Yeah.
And I love to do the engagement. I would set like a 10-minute timer to go find other
Okay.
therapists to engage with and
Yeah.
look at their followers to engage with from there. Honestly, 10 minutes a day can be like transformative. I've seen like really awesome results from just engaging with people and not posting anything. Like, I
Mm,
haven't posted something in whatever, 2 weeks or something, but I know my audience is people are still engaging because I'm engaging with them. I'm not, like,
nice.
waiting for them. So that would be, like, next level if you have time or, like, need to outsource that to somebody.
Mhm.
But I would start with just making your billboard. You have, like, this free space to share things with new clients that you can transform into whatever you want. But I would keep it
Love
simple
that.
as
Yeah,
possible in the
keep
beginning.
it simple. Now now do you help with that stuff? You know, I always wonder about, like, creators. Do you just do, like, like, the writing and the ideas, or are you somebody that's like, "Hey, if you hire me, I'm gonna go in and engage on other accounts that are good for your, your account or your niche or whatever." Do you do
Totally.
that part for your clients? Okay,
I do
interesting.
mostly consulting with people. So they'll
Okay,
come and they'll be like, "Hey, what should I do?" And I'm like, "Let me teach you how to do this engagement so you can go and do
nice.
it."
Love
Rather than doing the nitty-gritty of, because like, I have gone and
yeah.
engaged with people in their
Mhm,
account,
mhm.
but and I can get as close to being them as possible through, like, really learning their brand and who they are. But
Yeah,
coming from them is
yeah.
obviously far better. And like we've kind of talked about before, if you are posting a comment on somebody's post and it's just like, "Wow, so great." It's not
Yeah.
as en
Heart emoji or something. It's
yeah,
not, like, authentic, like, it's not gonna generate, like,
totally,
engagement back to you, right? Is
totally,
that yeah,
totally.
gotcha.
Yeah, and just a few
Makes
minutes a
sense.
day, like, really goes a long way. Um Like, if
Nice.
I would do that more than I would post on social media, if you're
Mhm.
listening to this, just start
Yeah.
engaging with people rather than posting. Because people, like, they just wanna know you exist. They
Mhm.
don't care if you post 5 days a week, they really don't. They just wanna know that the content you are creating aligns with them. So if you can do that in less
Yeah.
posts, you're winning and saving time.
Yeah, and even for therapists, like, if we're commenting on other therapist posts and we're always, like, are doing, like, good engagement and good, like, helpful commenting, like, they might be a referral network for you. They might be able to say, like, "Hey, I'm not taking new clients, but I know traveling therapist Kim always talks about OCD in my comments, so let me refer you to her. Why don't you go see if you
Totally.
can work with her because I'm not doing that kind of work anymore," whatever.
Totally. I think like the
Yeah.
community you can build with your peers
Mhm.
online by doing that is so valuable because then you
Yeah.
become the go-to person for X thing. And that's what you need. You need people
Yeah.
who like the networking that can come from it alone is more powerful than trying to get cold leads in. Um
Yeah. Like a pamphlet to a doctor's office, which is such
yeah.
a outdated marketing, but I still hear
Yeah.
people say that all the time. Like, print some pamphlets and send them to all the doctors around. I mean, I
It's
don't
like
know how well that works.
yeah, no, instead you should just have a great relationship with that doctor so when they're meeting with their patients to be like, "Hey, I actually know someone who would
Yeah,
be really helpful for you." That is
exactly.
far better than the pamphlets nobody wants to pick up and read.
Yeah. Like, help their clients in the comments of Instagram, and then that
Yeah.
doctor's like, "Oh, okay, this is a therapist I can refer to." Yeah, I mean, there's so many creative ways to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and
yeah.
starting with like, if you did wanna engage with doctors, start with the doctors in your local area. Don't go start engaging on a post with a doctor who lives thousands of miles from you. That's, like,
Exactly.
that might be helpful. It might, but it's probably gonna
Especially
be
for therapists, because we can only
yeah,
see clients that are state of licensure. So, why would you go outside of your, like, state of licensure with
right.
doing stuff like that? Yeah, if that's your goal. But if you have multiple income streams and you're selling courses also about OCD to everybody in the world, like, that's okay. Like, you've gotta be
Right,
kinda
that's true.
strategic around it. Yeah.
Right, and that comes back to just your goals, like, why are you even on this to begin with? Are you on it because you
Yeah.
feel like you have to be? Are you on it because you have a course to sell? Great. Yeah, but either way, I think starting with whether you do have a big course to sell to anybody could buy anywhere, or your one-on-one services in your specific state, starting with
Mhm.
the people who are physically close to you, engaging with them online is a
Yeah.
great start because then it's like, oh, then they start engaging with someone the next state over and they might be the person who wants to buy your course.
Right.
Starting small with people in front of you. That's like what I think
Love that.
people forget about creating community or like building
Mhm.
community. They want to keep growing online, but they forget that the people who are already in your community are going to be the ones who will help you grow more
Yes.
because of that networking. So it's not constantly about, oh my gosh, I'm going to use this trendy content to get more cold leads. It's like, no, I'm going to really focus on being nice, and genuinely wanting to connect with the people who are in front of me so that
Yeah.
I can reach more people that way
Yeah.
and getting referrals.
Definitely. Yep. Oh gosh. Awesome. I love it.
So
I
many
could talk
things.
about this all day.
I
I
know,
know we're
so
almost
many
out of time.
things.
So how do people, if they want to work with you? I guess, I mean, I know you do travel content writing, that you're at
Totally.
travel content writing right here, but will you work with like a therapist is like, hey, can you consult with me like with systems and like some ideas so I can just get on the
Totally.
right track with this? Okay, cool.
Totally. I have worked with, oh my God, a multitude of different business owners. You name the
Nice.
niche, I've probably helped someone in it. It's insane. Like from a vet to like education, everything in between. Yes. So, like, I would say the best thing to do if you're listening to this and you're like, this sounds great, but am I really the type of person who can go and implement this on my own? Like, I need like a framework. That's where
Nice.
I can help you in a one-on-one session to give you personalized feedback and guidance on like, "Hey, this is
Love
great.
that.
What you have is great, and here's like actionable tiny steps you can take rather than like, here's a 6-month content plan, go create it." Like, that's not realistic. So
Yeah,
that a consultation session, a coaching session, a strategy session, whatever you wanna call it, that 60 minutes is it's gonna be super helpful to do
that's
that.
great. So how do they find you?
Yes. You can find me on Instagram at Travel Content Writing. You can go to my website. It's travelcontentwriting.com.
Nice.
It's being rebuilt. Maybe by the time this is out, it will be new, but
Cool.
it still is working. You can go there. Instagram is where I am most active. So if you send me a message there, I will see it. But those are great places to find me. If you want more marketing advice, I have a podcast. It's for travel
Nice.
influencers, which is not
I need to
you.
listen to that.
But
It is me.
if you want, let's say you want to be like Kim, you're like, "Great, I wanna do what Kim does and go to all these
Yeah.
beautiful places, and now I'm crushing it and I am," and you want tips on how to make your online business a little bit easier, that podcast is the Travel Creator Podcast. So you
Cool.
can go find that there too.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And you guys, of course, all this information will be in the show notes if you want to reach out to Laura and work with her.